that are telling the lies. That is not all right. This got a lot of press. Some of you probably heard about it. We've done some other things that got some press. One of my favorites as a Tor developer is the censorship lists. It's really important that people understand that, for example, in Australia, the dentist in Australia is potentially a threat, because that's what ends up on those lists. And there are a lot of other things that you can see on our website. So, we did choose a pretty provocative title, Collateral Murder. You guys think that's provocative? Yeah? Some of you are probably unhappy about that, right? No? Oh, wow, I'm surprised. Well, let's be clear. We chose that title for a really good reason. This is the language of the people that are doing these things. This is, without a doubt, a murder. If you watched this video, more than a dozen people being gunned down. I mean, these are not small machine guns. For those of you that have shot a machine gun, it's probably bigger than any machine gun you've ever shot. And it was mounted on a helicopter, which, I don't know about you, but it's really, really hard to take down a helicopter with a camera. This is not the world that we want to see, right? We don't want to see these things happening, but we don't want to see these things not happening by people suppressing the video. We want to change this. Every single one of you that thinks that it's right that we're in Iraq needs to remember that you specifically are directly responsible for this. And for those of you that aren't, but have friends. The way that Harvey Milk was so successful in getting people to stop gay bashing people was that it wasn't to, if you're gay, which I am, if you're gay and you come out and you say, I'm gay, you should respect me. No. What he said was, and this was brilliant, go home to your friends and family and come out to them and tell them, listen, when you're talking about killing other gay people, you're talking about killing your family members and my friends. And that changed things overnight. And it changed it overnight because, you see, it's quite clear to me that it changed it because people don't care when things are far removed from them. People care when it's directly in their face, and it's something that they already respect. So you're not forcing this issue. You're allowing them to freely choose and think about it, and to change the way that things are going directly. And so I have lots of friends that used to make lots of slurs about both the war and homophobic slurs that don't do that anymore because they respect and love me for who I am. And so I ask you to remember that some of these people are distant, but you would do the same thing. You would pick up someone who had been shot on the side of the road because you are a good person. So it seems to me that we should make sure that we don't forget this. There's a lot of spin involved with this video, but it's wrong. It's very clear what happened here, which is that it was a series of murders of people who were unarmed, people who were very clearly walking through the streets of a normal city. I mean, sure, it's a city that's at war, but we brought them to war. So it's very hard to fault them for this. And it's also quite clear to me that people on the streets there defend themselves because there isn't a simple, normal thing like we have here. You don't just have certain expectations. Anything can happen. But that doesn't mean if someone has something that looks like a gun, that it absolutely is a gun. It could be a tripod, and it could be a camera. But what's most telling about this is that the US military knew all of this, and instead of copying to it, they tried to cover it up. How that journalist got that video is up in the air. The fact that they didn't release it is quite clear, but now you have it, so now you know. So now it's up to us to change something as a result of this. On a technical level, this was a test drive of a new hosting architecture. Some of you probably also heard about the September 11th pager messages that were released. Those pager messages were a prototype for this system. It's not pretty, but it's not meant to be pretty. It's meant to deliver the information to you, to replicate it, to distribute it in some way, to be scalable in a way that is very difficult to censor. And the purpose here is to make a major political impact. And we did. We met our goal, which we always do. So let's be clear about something. This is obviously in the air, and it's extremely important to state this. There is someone who has been alleged to be a source by a person who has no name in this community anymore. Do I have agreement on that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Could we try that again with a little sincerity? Thank you for renewing my faith in this community. I was a little bit unsure. Maybe not too much, but I believe that the key thing here to remember is silence, not violence. Okay? This person prides themselves on being heard and thought about. Just forget them. They are irrelevant. They are not making a change that creates the world that we want to see. And you can agree with me by just forgetting. He doesn't exist. It isn't important. And he isn't important. So, someone alleged to be our source, we are going to support them. This is very serious. The charges that are leveled against him are not something like 2 or 3 months. At the moment, the charges that are leveled are, well, let's say, pretty serious. They look like somewhere over 50 years in prison. That's a really serious amount of time in jail. And can you imagine this? The information you have in your head, that information is the thing that he is alleged to have done. How can we, as a society, do something like that? We can't. We have to support him. So let's be quite clear about this. There is legal support for him, but there are some problems. Julian and I were speaking a couple of days ago, and he told me that there are some JAGs involved, and there are some lawyers with clearances. And not all of the lawyers have a clearance, and not all of the lawyers are JAGs. It appears, Julian has stated that there are 7 lawyers. But most importantly, some of the lawyers have agreed to take $50,000. That $50,000, though, is not enough, they say. They wish to have $200,000 minimum before continuing further. That means we've got some fundraising to do. That's pretty serious. So those of you that are working at a nonprofit and you want to raise some funds in some way, maybe get some matching donations, now is the time to leverage that. For every one of you that believes that someone who is accused to have done a thing like this needs our support, now is the time to make that support. This is a person that if something happens to him, if he is convicted, this is quite serious. That is an entire young man's life in jail, in a military prison, almost certainly. And that is not something that I can support. And I and many people at WikiLeaks are very clearly working directly against that outcome. We want to see him walk free. And we can't do that without every one of you, literally, getting up and helping us. It is a necessity. There is a website, bradleymanning.org. Some of you know about this. This is being spearheaded by a number of people. It's extremely important that you visit this site, that you read it, that you look for information there. This person is really taking the lead, and this group of people is really making a difference. They're extremely, extremely good. Their heart is in the right place. And it's important to remember, Manning is alleged to have done these things. He is not convicted. So, I want to go on to create a world, quite clearly, that doesn't have to have these types of concerns, where instead of the law being used to prosecute alleged sources, we are going to make some big changes. So there's a country called Iceland, which some of you are familiar with, which I previously have mentioned. And Iceland is pretty much the most fantastic country in the world when it comes to freedom of information. It's really quite amazing. It's the type of place where when you walk down the streets in Reykjavik, you can actually meet parliamentarians on the street without a security detail, and they'll talk to you, and they'll have coffee with you, and they'll even take you into the parliament if you'd like. That's some serious representative democracy in action. WikiLeaks is part of an advisory group. Part of the reason that I went to Iceland was also to be part of that advisory group as a Tor project person. I guess